Okay, we're gonna start talking about algebra, like for real. So here's the thing about algebra. All right, I might actually try to start to edit these with fanciness. Once upon a bygone age, I was a filmmaker, and I actually know how to put these things together. I just, mama can't be bothered. So, what is algebra? Um, Algebra essentially means the method. That's why this uber math dork, who also does theater, named my theater company the Algebra Theater, because it's the method. I know you theater folk get it. Algebra is a method. It Complex problem solving existed long before algebra came along. Okay, and the symbols that we use in algebra, in mathematics, are incredibly precise, as we've been talking about, and you need to know what each one means. A dash, subtraction or negative, right? This symbol, plus sign, two lines equals, right? Um, when there's a point. Here's the sidebar. In Europe, their decimal placeholder is a comma, and we use commas to denote like 100,000, million, billion, right? Um, then we use a period for that to the fractional part. So it gets a little. Um, but algebra. So I gotta tell the story. I can't introduce algebra without telling this story. All right, are you ready to settle in? Oh, Big Mama's gonna tell you a story. All right, it's one of my favorite stories, and I've told it many times to many students. When I was a youngster, all those wisp. Are you ready? I have a half a cup of coffee. I might need a full cup, but we'll just keep going. If I run out, I'll let you know. When I was a young lass in beautiful, picturesque Minnesota, back in the bygone era when Ronald Reagan was president, and I was first introduced to the idea of algebra, I remember thinking, some things. First of all, who's Pythagoras? And why is this theorem named after him? Second of all, why are we using these symbols? Where does this come from? And these are questions that were never answered. Partially because I think some of my math teachers didn't know, and partially because young lass Rebecca would not ask. I never asked any question ever in high school, middle school. High school I did. Middle school, elementary school, and as an adult, I usually just forged ahead with whatever people told me. So, that's why when I started figuring it out, I was like, oh, this is like the greatest thing ever. Okay, so picture this. Are you ready? I might need my whiteboard. All right, okay. Picture this. You are living in the center of the world, which was all those many years ago. Not America, please. It was in the Mediterranean Sea. So, are you going to be ready for my map of the Mediterranean? So we'll say like this could be like here's the Mediterranean. Oh shoot, here's the boot of Italy, and there's like a little that's Greece. This is Spain. That's Sicily, I think. And then it loops around and does this, and then this is Africa, and this goes up into Europe. And this looks really, yep. So, okay, that's Italy. We'll just say Italy. It's so much easier. So, okay, and this is Arabia. You see over here, this is like, Israel, Palestine, like all that stuff, right? So Africa, and it gets real close right there, right? Like, and so blah blah blah, and this is Spain, and Portugal, and Italy, and over here's Israel, right? Okay, so this is the Mediterranean. I wish I had blue. Okay, so picture this. Picture my really phenomenal map in your brain. I erased Italy, okay? It's all right. All right, so there's a guy, Al-Khwarizmi. Yeah, it's where we get the word algorithm, where if you're in math, you know that word very well. Al-Khwarizmi is way the blue blob over here. Oh, I'm running out. Oh, I'm running out of my dry erase marker. He's way over there. At the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. And he's like, there's lots of meditation and stuff happening, and lots of science. Tons of geometry going on. All those mosaics that are like all over the Mediterranean and all over into Iraq and Iran and Persia, like that, like ancient Persia. Math. It's actually phenomenal how if you wrap your head around like areas and spaces and angles and the geometries of what that is, it's phenomenal. Okay, so tessellations, math. Okay, so over here, Al-Khwarizmi is doing his thing, right? Meanwhile, this is why Italy's important. There's a dude, Bonacci. Okay, Bonacci's a merchant, and he goes and moves to like Casablanca. Okay, over here in Africa. But as we know, in this time, the main, like, this is the trading hub, but like Europe is on the rise. Okay, it's the Renaissance. It's getting close to the Renaissance-ish time. I think it's around 1100. So we don't actually give a rip about Bonacci, who came here. What we like to know about is his son, Fibonacci. Leonardo da Pisa, okay? Don't confuse him with Leonardo da Vinci, although they were both brilliant. But Leonardo da Pisa, what made him brilliant is that he wasn't necessarily coming up with all this stuff. He was finding things and telling everybody in Europe about it, okay? So, this is how, okay, we're a Eurocentric nation. It just is what it is, okay? And then, like, without getting into the whole history of Rome and Greece and blah blah blah, and then Britain and the sun never sets on the British Empire and America. Let's just sidebar that. This is how, yes, this method was in where Al-Khwarizmi did it, but it wasn't what we know today if it weren't for this path. Because a lot of people had their hands in the pile until it became what every human being on the planet learns. So, Fibonacci, Leonardo da Pisa, and he has another amazing thing that he pulled out of East Asia. He's here in North Africa, but he's Italian. He's from Pisa. He's in North Africa doing his father's books. Okay? They're merchants. Money, right? So, Fibonacci is like doing his dad's books, right? And he's like, hold on, like, and we do this and carry the one, and he's dealing with freaking Roman numerals, first of all. Roman numerals. Fibonacci's the one that brought our decimal numeration system. Our number system is called Hindu Arabic, okay? Because it came from that part of the world where the big X marks Al-Khwarizmi. Our number system came from here, but it was Fibonacci using Roman numerals that was like, no. So first of all, he did that. But then he's realizing he's been doing calculations with an abacus and Roman numerals. No, not even an abacus at that point. Sorry, I'm mixing my... I need a dust. I'm getting excited. He's doing with Roman numerals, and it's all by word, right? Like, I got 5 vases, and they were shipped to this place, Cairo, and this went to Jerusalem, and now I have 30 gold coins and 25 of this monetary unit and blah blah blah, and they're all in different numeration systems, and they're all coming in different ways. And Fibonacci's like, I mean, he was He was truly like a linguist of exchanging values, right? He's taking it in all these different currencies. He's the original Forex trader. He's doing all these different currencies. Well, at least he gets credit for it. And then he's passing it off. And he's like, oh, this is freaking ridiculous, right? And he comes across this merchant using this very clear and obvious thing. And he's like, what the actual, right? So I can't speak for where Al-Khwarizmi got this, although I have read portions of his book. And it's not the algebra that we know today. But what Al-Khwarizmi viewed it as is like, if I have something balanced, right? And if I, put one thing on one side, I have to put something of equal value on the other side. Or if I take something off one side, I have to put something take something of equal value off. And we understand, if you've ever seen a child on a balance beam, or you've ever tried to be on a balance beam, you can even balance on one foot. The moment you pick a foot off the ground, your body shifts because it's already recognizing to stay balanced, right? It has to do this. Well, so Al-Khwarizmi was the guy who kind of came up with that idea, and he called it the method of problem solving. And Fibonacci was like, oh my gosh, this is what we have to do. This is so much easier than all this nonsense we're doing, right? So he brings it back to Italy. Now, I don't know much about the original Bonacci, but he must have been at least a moderately powerful guy, because he was able to get Fibonacci into like talking with the people who can matter, right? And Europe didn't adopt it right away, but they did relatively quickly. And shortly thereafter, the equations that we know them came into play. The symbols were different. The plus sign looked like what we would maybe have as an and, like with a little swoop to it. And there were a lot of different ways. They would do one side and then they would write the word equals. I believe it was Robert Ricord who actually made the two bars that we know it as today. So our symbols have a history, and they have a history of human thought and ingenuity of like, how do we make this easier? How do we make this easier to do these things, okay? There's a reason why every school-age child is taught algebra, because it's beautiful, and it gets your brain to work in a manner that is intuitive problem solving. You become a problem solver. That's really what your brain is trying to be trained to do. That is why every student is supposed to do it, because we want human beings in our citizenry who can think critically, and this is the beginning of it. Now, most people don't know that. Period. They just regurgitate it, and I'll be first to say I did when I was a youngster, because it just made sense. And someone said, do this, and I said, okay, and then I got my paper back, and it was like 10 out of 10, and I was like, okay, I must know what I'm doing, and then I just kept regurgitating it. And it wasn't until I get bored with that idea that I start daydreaming in class that then I want to know why. And that's when the fascination comes in. So, I didn't actually introduce any of the symbols, but I do think it's important that you know where it comes from and why. Yes, math is about merchant stuff. Yes. Archimedes could build things with engineering, and so could the Egyptians and the Greeks without algebra. Yes, but they did it. The calculations were just. Imagine doing a moderately complex problem in calculus using entirely words. And then every step you're using words. It's just excruciatingly long. It's not that they couldn't do it in their brains cognitively, or they couldn't write it down. But that's the brilliance of Al-Khwarizmi's method, is it simplified everything, and it became elegant. And it parsed human thought into just a few symbols, and suddenly the problem's solved. And if you can't get jazzed about that, as a parent maybe, I don't know what to do. I can't help you, right? And as a young person, If you're learning this, I know there's some drudgery to it, but my God, you are part of the train of human thought from the dawn of time. And you get to take this thing and learn this thing that was just groundbreaking, world changing. And now, as Shakespeare says, it's the 7 stages of man. Now, the whining schoolboy doesn't want to have to learn it. And it's sad. And God forbid Common Core allow teachers to take a 20-minute lesson to just talk about where it came from. That's never going to be on the standardized test. So, okay, I won't get on my podium too much. But I thought this was important because we're going to now embark on one of the greatest journeys of thinking that you could ever start on, because it leads to everything. It leads to engineering. It leads to physics. It leads to chemistry. It makes biology easier. It leads, of course, to pure math. It leads to philosophy. It leads to poetry. It leads to language. What you are about to embark on can be infused in. It leads to art, as I already talked about the mosaics. You have no idea where math goes unless you're willing to see. So, all right, podium done. Please don't remember my really terrible map of the Mediterranean. Okay. Stay safe. Have a good one.